Oh, we are live. Finally, guys. Yeah, sorry for being waiting. I know you were sitting here waiting for us, and today we had some really strange technical difficulties with application systems. So we were trying to log in and have all tests, but something on Crowdcast was not working. But finally, we are here with you, and we are happy to do a presentation for you. So today, in our Matchr series, I'm really happy to announce that Tom Case is visiting us on our live session with uh, like amazing presentation and amazing topic on the inside scope of startup recruiting. And I really want to introduce Tom to you because yeah, just check, go to his LinkedIn profile, check experience. You will be really shocked because Tom is like head of talent and at Cerebras System, a computer system company that building like really new type of computer optimized for AI works. And personally, I really like AI things and all of these new technologies. And this work like contains the world's largest computer chip. So yeah. And before that, Tom was basically working in all Intel Corporation as a head of strategic talent. Especially specifically also in Intel Capital and Intel AI systems, and also at Facebook, and was director of companies that were doing some executive search. So Tom has a lot of experience, like from 2000, right? Years. So it's really a lot, and I'm so excited. Some of our visitors even not having like not burned yet when they had like when you started working in recruitment. So I'm giving word to you. And also to all of you guys, I will be sharing presentation because we have some, I know, strange things. So I will be a slide checker for Tom's, and we'll be clicking slides. So Tom, feel free to say like next or go on, and I will be clicking.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can share right now, giving word to you, and I will also go to your presentation. Yeah, we can go
Well,
on.
I'll try and get through the presentation, reasonably quickly, but please ask questions as we go along. I guess my interest in doing this is just to meet a lot of new people in recruiting. I think what we do is really difficult, and so it's made easier by meeting a lot of people that are similarly passionate about what we're doing and have great ideas. So good to meet everyone. I'm from the UK. I live in San Francisco. As Dima said, I'm old. I guess I have a lot of experience. So happy to share it with you. But actually, only in the last 3 years did I work within a startup. I've worked for and alongside and consulted with startups for years and years and years. But just in the last 3 years, I took this role of head of recruiting for this really incredible startup in the Bay Area in California. So I guess I'll share most of my sort of tips and things like that from there. But I chose this first slide because I think from joining a startup, it just it sort of sums up what impressed me is that, the reason startups, I think, do such incredible things and move so quickly is because you really only have one product to work on, and that is this incredible force for bringing everyone in the company together. And it's what I love most actually about startup recruiting is that whether you're recruiting engineering, product, marketing, you're all working on the same product, and so it's an amazing collaboration. I thought I would just talk a little bit about myself. When we have interns at Cerebras, we do a 4-slide talk on our own backgrounds and interests through pictures. So Dima, if you can go to the next slide, I'll try and show some pictures of my life and tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah, sure. Just a second. I'm
Okay, no problem.
sharing it.
That's cool. We got someone from Nigeria, India. We're just opening up an engineering team in India, so I've been trying to get to know the different dynamics of the market. It's unbelievable how quickly that market is moving. And Michigan, don't know the Michigan market. Where in California are you, Angelo? Am I meant to be saying anything, Dima, or are we?
Yeah, I think I relogged in and should be fine. So I'm just sharing entire my screen. Yeah, should kind of work right now. So yeah, just sharing your presentation. So now you can
Sacramento, cool. Someone in my
the
team's from
screen
Sacramento.
recruiting presentation. So you should see it right now.
Yep. So if you go to the, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I just finally I will be able to share. Yeah. Can you click because I use another program how to share? So we click
Yeah,
file.
just in the bottom right next to the zoom out button, there's a full screen button.
Yeah. Okay. Here, right. Can you see it right now? And we click Control Enter. Yeah.
There we go. So if you go to the next slide, I'll run through this quite quickly because it's, you know, we've taken a while to kind of get up and running. But yeah, so we do this thing where we use pictures to try and very quickly talk through our own backgrounds. And we have about 30 interns that join us every year. And we have this one session where everybody just shares a few slides with some pictures, and it's really pretty cool. You get to know them from wherever they are. So top left that's my desk, my cat, my wife, my kid. I'm English, so just in the bottom, moving to the bottom left, I went to boarding school. I'm a cricket nut. I love it. And those are my parents at my brother's wedding, next to me playing cricket. They were my sort of inspiration, I think, for getting into startups. That sweater is my mum's company called the Collar Company. And then below that is my dad's company, which is an investment company. And James Dyson is there in the top right because he had an opportunity to back him in the 1970s and couldn't quite raise all of the money to do it. But if he had, life would be very different. Could you go to the next slide? These are some of the companies that I started up. So at school, I was selling cigarettes. I was making fake IDs. In the middle there is university, where I set up a record label. And on the right-hand side, I set up a DVD vending system in the UK with a supermarket chain called Lidl. Next slide. So this was the first part of my recruiting career. I worked in executive search for 8 years, and I worked with some of these companies in the UK, lastminute.com, Benevolent AI, Deliveroo, which is huge now. And all of these things inspired me to come to Silicon Valley, come to California and work with startups. Next slide. And then in the last 7 years, for me, I've got the opportunity to work with some amazing people. And I think increasingly, I sort of base my career decisions off the entrepreneur, the founder that I get to work with. And so these are three pivotal people in my career. On the left, it's Jan LeCun, who I got to work with at Facebook to build out Facebook's first international AI research lab. And then in the middle, it's Naveen Rao, who set up a company called Nirvana Systems that's building an AI chip, and he sold it to Intel. And we had a couple of years trying to build that out within Intel. And then on the right, my current boss, Andrew, at Cerebrus Systems. And so, again, I think I love with startups, you get to work for these really amazing people. Next slide. So I joined this company, Cerebrus, 3 years ago in 2019, and I thought what I would do is just tell you a little bit about the company. Before that, I tried to get advice before joining a startup. So I think I got some really good advice, and I thought I'd share some of that. So next, yeah, perfect. So some of this advice that I was given, first piece of advice was you need to work in a startup to truly understand them. I think that is so true after having been there for 2 or 3 years. It's incredibly fast paced and challenging. And a lot of what you need to understand to make great hires in startups, you really need to understand the dynamics within the company. The second piece was to set yourself a 2-year target. I think that the advice there is that you get very emotionally involved in startups. They're smaller companies, so you just have a much more emotional attachment. I think it can be easy to stay in a startup for too long if the company is failing. So this piece of advice was just to every 2 years take a check-in with where you're going in your career and where the company's going. The third piece, I think, when you're picking a startup is to evaluate the company like an investor. So market size, team, and what they're doing that's different from others. And then I think your career, you can see it in 4-year blocks because you're, maybe rather than earning money through, through a kind of annual compensation scheme, you're really doing it for longer term equity. And so you kind of see these in 4-year blocks. What can I do in 4 years? And then, possibly move on. And then the last is startups do fail. They are more volatile. So don't stop if you do one and it doesn't work out. I'm still on the first one, so I don't know about that, but I think it's probably good advice. So very quickly with Cerebrus, it's been an amazing 3 years for me. I joined when they were in stealth, and we've now come out with the biggest semiconductor chip ever. We have tens of millions of dollars of revenue. We've raised $750 million. And in our valuation is 4.1 billion, and it was about 800 million when I joined. So it's you get in startups, you get to see the value that you put on the company. So it's over $3 billion in value. Is just a fantastic feeling. We've expanded internationally, Canada, Japan. We're going into India. We're looking at Europe, in particular, Eastern Europe, where I think there are some amazing places to set up locations. And we've grown from under 100 people when I joined to around 450, and we'll be 600 by the end of the year. So it's been a very busy time, and we've done it with a team of 6. So that's a little bit about Cerebrus. What I wanted to do was just talk through some of the things that I've learned over the last 3 years. So Dima, do you want to go to the next slide? This is a picture of our chip. So that's a wafer scale chip, biggest chip ever built by an order of magnitude. It's 56 times bigger than the biggest GPU. So this is Natalia, our head of product, showing it. So I just thought it would be quite cool to do it. I think if you join a startup, you go for something that's just doing something crazy. Otherwise, there's lots of stuff that's maybe better suited to bigger companies, but startups are suited to taking on impossible challenges. And so I think if you're going to really live the startup journey, that's a good place to start when you're thinking about picking a company. Next slide.
Yeah, really love this chip, especially that a huge one, not like in our computers. Probably it's for some really hard calculations and for, I don't know, for what it is, for rockets or even for biggest servers, right? Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. We package this in our own system. It's got over 850,000 cores. So the idea is you can put a whole deep learning network. You can map the whole network to one chip. So you don't have to do distributed computing. It creates huge amounts of performance. So the value prop, we have customers where they're either not able to do the work that they're doing on our system, which is really neat, because it's that they've done, things like, COVID to try and find vaccines. We work with national labs. Yeah, it's very cool stuff. Next slide. So I kind of broke what when I was thinking about what I've done the last 3 years and what I think could be worth talking about. I sort of broke it into these 5 areas. The reason for the picture is I've noticed with recruiters in startups, it's it can be quite a lonely role. You come in as the first recruiter. So there's sort of, in essence, there's no one else in recruiting. You have to establish everything yourself. It is both really inspiring, but also kind of daunting and lonely. And obviously over time you build out a team and things like that. And I think that's a great joy. But I was just thinking about, this is sort of day one. Could we go to the next slide? And there's a question here. It's from Dima. Yeah, it's their data center chips. So at the moment they're deployed on-prem with companies like GlaxoSmithKline and AstraZeneca and Department of Energy national labs and supercomputers. So it's an accelerator. So thinking about the first thing I think that you establish when you come into a startup is your workflow. It's, when you work for bigger companies, recruiting is already mapped out. How you operate is already set out. The interesting thing about a startup is that it isn't. You have to establish it. And I think that's a great problem to have. So I think 3 things about workflow. The first is that it starts and ends with the CEO. So you're now not working with HR or recruiting teams. You're working with the business. You're working. You really have to understand how to work effectively with a CEO. And I think that there's a very different mindset. And your success and enjoyment of the role and your ability to get stuff done really depends on that relationship. So I would say if there's one thing to take away from this whole presentation, it's that you're working with the CEO and you've got to figure out how to make that work. They're very busy people, so you've got to kind of plug in with them. And I think that that's what I designed our workflow around. It was around our CEO. And in return, they help you a lot. They help you a huge amount. They help you build the importance and the culture of talent within the company. But it's really important to be able to optimize for their time and really communicate well with them. So the second piece is that everybody recruits. You're always going to be behind what you need to do in startups. You're never going to be able to catch up. You need to use the whole company. You can't bottleneck it by just doing recruiting work within your team. You really need to think about how you enable the company to recruit, and that way your recruiting capacity grows as you grow the company. So in that sense, it's a workflow that can scale. And the final one is to prioritize. You can't do everything. I think you need to work out with the CEO what they want you to get done. It's probably not filling every role that you're currently trying to recruit for. You're probably trying to figure out what is highest use for your recruiting team. And then what do you do with the rest? So you really need to prioritize, and then you really need to communicate that prioritization to the CEO and to everyone in the company, so everyone's on the same page. And particularly when you grow a recruiting team, you know, it's I feel that recruiters, it's a difficult role because everybody is asking you for stuff all of the time. So to sort of protect against that, you really need to create a prioritization and get alignment across the company so everybody knows what you're working on. So to the next topic, operations. This is something that I knew very little about. I had done executive search, I'd done more sort of strategic stuff. So I'm not wonderful at this, but I do know that tools are very valuable for helping you kind of scale your time. So I think the first thing that we did was we put in place an ATS. We had an ATS in place when I joined. When you join startups, they often will. I think there are free or very cheap ones that you often start off with, but we ended up choosing Greenhouse. And for us, we wanted something with APIs that could link up to lots of different services, and one that was easy for the other hiring teams to be able to use. In terms of technology, there's a lot of really cool automation for sourcing, which, you know, if we had more time, I would love to learn from other people about. I'm just starting to learn about it, but we have this new tool called Find'em, which pulls together patents and GitHub repos and you know, LinkedIn. It pulls all these different data sources into one rather than just one being LinkedIn. So that's been quite useful. And then it has a CRM on the background, on the back of it, so that we can do kind of large outreach campaigns to candidates and automatic follow-ups. And then with data, I know that this is a really hot topic for recruiting. I find just enough data. There's so much data that you can look at. It's making data useful that is the key. And so for me, that is picking the couple of pieces of data that really tell you a true picture. Otherwise, you can look at loads of data and not really be able to figure out what's going on. So I have a couple of go-to data sources, and we keep it on a dashboard. And I actually share that. I have that dashboard, you know, live linked up to the CEO, so he looks at that every single day. And I think if you can do that with a CEO, and you can have a communication method where you have something that's really valuable and they check it every day, it'll help you an awful lot, because they don't really have time to call you and contact you. And so something that they can just look at in their own time is very helpful. So the second piece here is talent ops. We hired someone to do talent ops on our team. Just unbelievable. I mean, it was a sort of game changer for our recruiting team. I think he took all of the scheduling, all of the on and offboarding, and a lot of the programmatic side of university hiring off our plates. He did it, you know, and does it, you know, many times better than we did. And it frees up time to do sourcing and recruiting. And then the third piece is interviewing, which, you know, operationally, it's the most intensive recruiting, you know, time intensive recruiting activity that you do across the company. So you really need to think very carefully about efficiency and effectiveness, because if it's not effective, you're spending a lot of time to not get anywhere. And it could be dangerous. You could hire the wrong people. And so, you know, this is a whole topic in and of itself, but I think defining interview processes is useful. In a startup, it's sort of structure without too much structure. And then driving decisions, you know, I think you have a lot of people that interview and make decisions that haven't done it before. It's not like bigger companies where you have a lot of a kind of mature interview process. You have lots of resources and people that can train and things like this. You're really doing stuff on the fly in a startup. So I think that as a recruiter, you play a very key role to drive decisions. And then for us with referrals, actually, we take the view that if you know someone, if someone's worked with someone before, that's going to be a lot more signal on the person than we'll ever get from interviewing. So we generally don't interview people if we have a really good referral. And I haven't seen that anywhere before, but it's been very effective for us. Should we go to the next one, Dima? Okay, so recruiting is obviously a much bigger topic than just these three slices. But for me, we needed to get our sourcing model straight. It took about a year to do. We did use agencies, and we spent a lot of time on agencies and the candidates that they sent with actually fairly little success. So we ended up building an in-house team. And, I think that you have to keep measuring the data that tells you whether what you're doing is right or not. And you have to keep reviewing it and evolving it. But for us at the moment, we're in such a difficult market. I found that having people inside the company is more effective than using agencies. Where we do use agencies is on very specialist roles. And so I think that's important. But for us, it was kind of getting the sourcing model, right. So, what is it that's going to actually enable us to bring new ideas to the table? Because when you join a startup, they're generally recruiting through their referral networks. So I think one of the things you need to bring in building a recruiting team is a more proactive muscle where you can go out and find people that the company doesn't know and build a system to assess that. And so we've had our fair share of wins, and I think it's through building a really amazing in-house team. The second piece is knowing the difference between good and exceptional. I didn't hear this actually talked about too much in bigger companies. I know it does matter. It really matters in startups. I've seen individuals come on board for us and actually change the course of what we're doing within the product. So really amazing individuals can make a huge difference. And so I think as a recruiting team, you have to set your sights on that. You won't win it probably a fraction of the time, but I think you really need to know as a team the difference between good and exceptional, what it looks like, how you advise the different hiring teams on how to assess it and find it, and then of course how to close it. Part of closing is being flexible. With top talent, often there isn't a role that maps exactly to what they to who they are, and so I think you have to think creative about how you bring those people into the company. And then the final bit with recruiting for startups is you could look at the landscape of companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Google and Amazon, and it could feel like you can never win. It's a real David and Goliath, particularly in this AI talent industry. So what we do is, just try and figure out what you do better than anybody else, and what are the properties, whether it's your technology, your culture, your leadership, your fundraising, earning potential. I don't know, but for us, there are a few things here. The CEO speaks to everybody before they join. So that's something that we can do, and it's something that big companies can't do. We can be incredibly quick. We can give an offer within 24 hours. That's something that a big company can't do. We can set up into international locations. If I speak to Dima in X country and he's great and has a team and he wants to join and bring them along, we can do that. We don't need to look at we don't need to go through a big sort of HR planning exercise. If we think it makes sense, we can go on our instincts, and we can make it happen. And I think that's a huge plus. And then the final thing is, because we're not a hierarchy, I think that anyone coming into a startup, the learning and responsibility is exponential. You have to try and get people out of the mindset of, what level am I coming in? What's the scope of my role? In a startup, your scope is really the growth of the company. If the company grows incredibly quickly and is very successful, there's no limit to the scope. And so getting people to really see that opportunity is very important. To the next one, Dima. Strategic planning this comes back to working with the CEO. And I think that in startups, it can be easy to be very reactive and transactional. You know, you're working so hard to just try and sort of stay on the treadmill. And I think that taking a pause when the CEO wants to, you know, when it's their planning time, but being a part of that, you know, they'll plan for sales, they'll plan for marketing, they'll plan for engineering with the roadmaps. I think you do the same for recruiting and ask them to take a step back and plan out what the next 12 months looks like. And you'll always get the response of, we don't have a clue, you know, we don't possibly know. But I think it's important to try and think about this. So at the very least, I try and get a number. You know, what are we roughly looking to add from a headcount perspective? So I think there are sort of 3 pillars that I base my strategic planning around. There's growth, there's scale, there's people. So growth is really, what's your number? What do you need to deliver? Scale is trying to think through, given that you can't do everything and the company's growing, you know, probably more and more each year, and you're not really growing your team I think you're sort of trying not to match that growth specifically with your team. So you're trying to look at the scale levers that you need to be thinking about that's going to help the company scale. And so for us, that was, you know, last year it was putting in a leadership level. We put in a number of directors to help give better focus on management, a better focus on sort of structuring up work, better focus on being able to help people develop and improve their careers. So, you know, thinking about, you know, movement to tech leadership or movement to management, or more time to think about architecture. And then this year, it's really been about international locations. I think for us, the US is, you know, which is where we're headquartered. North America is so tough for talent. It's marginal. You know, you'll do a lot of work and you'll win some and you'll lose some. And so we started to look at new countries. And maybe the last 2 years with the pandemic has enabled us to live very well as a distributed company. And so that's really where we're looking to get scale this year, is where are the teams outside of where we've been looking, North America. And the trade-off here is you have to learn to be a good distributed company, but the plus side is you can find amazing people around the world. And then the last thing is people or HR, because you normally don't have a lot of HR infrastructure in startups. I would say that startups normally build recruiting before they build HR. So no matter what your background, and I've never really done HR, you need to be thinking about it, because recruiting is only one side of it. Bringing people in is only one side. And then you look at what people are doing at the company, and whether that be onboarding, getting productive as soon as possible, thinking about fairness around compensation. I'm thinking about benefits, which has really changed over the last year or two to actually take care of people in a very different way. Or thinking about performance and what is enough structure and how do you kind of keep quick and lean. So those are the 3 things that I put in my strategic plan. And then the last one, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions, is team. This is something that if you get this right, this is without a doubt a force multiplier. I can safely say that everyone on my team is better at recruiting than me. When we went from myself to one other person, you know, it was like, you know, we doubled or tripled, I think, in terms of the output, because as you all know, you know, we're in a very competitive recruiting market, you know, and Dima, I know you know that, and I've spoken to Adrian about, you know, kind of how you guys think about growing your company. And the reason that you're so valuable to customers is because it's really difficult to find excellent recruiters, and so they're a force multiplier when you find them because they're experts at what they do. And for example, at the moment, we're looking for a sourcer, because if we could have someone that really has become an individual expertise in and of itself, just really understanding how to be an expert at sourcing. And so I think building and growing the team, and so that the sort of growth part there is when you bring great people in, they expect a lot. So kind of thinking about what the path is for them and how you can develop them. The second piece here is experts. We're in a very technical space, and most of what we do is engineering hiring. I believe that if you can really dive into engineering detail and understand it, albeit at a high level, not being able to implement code, but knowing what code is, knowing what algorithms are, just understanding the as much engineering detail as you can. That is a force multiplier for being productive in a startup. That's for sure. I think if you can speak to candidates and really go into quite a bit of depth, that actually stands out in this market. And then the last piece is closing. And maybe if starting with the CEO was the most important thing, maybe closing is the second most important thing. It's incredibly difficult. I don't think anyone has the answers for how to be a perfect closer. I think there's lots of things that can help, but especially when you build out your recruiting team, you build out the company, closing gets distributed across many different people, and it can be very difficult to stay really effective on it. So I put some things here. I mean, really understanding risk with the candidate, where are you at with them? How interested are they? What are the reasons that they would not take the opportunity? I think that's really trying to think ahead and plan for it. Knowing how to position the opportunity. Obviously, everyone has different interests, and so you can't position the same to everybody. Explaining compensation. Startups have the most amazing and powerful compensation package. I think that cash, sort of annual salary can give you a certain sort of lifestyle, but I think startups have the opportunity to really change someone's life. And I think getting to know compensation well enough such that you can get that across to somebody, such that you can give someone a consultation and help them really understand options and help them weigh up risk, because they're also more volatile startups. So, and then the final thing is benefits, which I think, as I say, more so, I see at least more so than ever in the last 2 years, are really critical. So those are the 5 things. I tried to go through them fairly quickly because we lost a bit of time at the beginning. But what questions, if any, can I answer?
Wow, super cool. It was really great, and it really was super structured, and we are on time even despite all of this technical stuff. So you are amazing speaker and great presentation. So yeah, let me just stop screen sharing, so we can come back to the live session. So Tom, yeah, I really resonate all of these things with you, and all of these great topics, especially about like a team and how you should organize everything. So really liked it. So yeah, thank you for sharing also email with guys. So they definitely, if you give consent, could write you asking questions how you organized it. We have several of questions. I would ask, first of all, is a comment from Anna. that's very cool that you started to use ATS from the beginning, and it's like time saver for startups that already having great stuff and candidates. And she's mentioning it. Unfortunately, not all of the startups like see the value of that at the beginning. So in the question are actually two questions. What are the main challenges in attracting people to join a small startup, and how did you solve them?
So there are many challenges to attracting people to startups. One of them is fear of work-life balance. I think the second is stability in someone's career. You know, I think that's actually probably the biggest thing. I think it's kind of known versus unknown. Startups are generally, you know, unknown, and because they're private, there's less written, less talked about them. And I think that bigger companies are, you know, you join a Facebook, a Microsoft, and Amazon. You know, it's a brand almost where you can't go wrong on your, you know, on your resume. And then of course, you know, from a compensation perspective, you know, they're public, so you kind of have more insight into what you're going to earn. I think that how we so we haven't solved it, but what we do is I think this comes back to playing to what your strengths are. And so this is, you know, in startups, I've seen people have exponential career growth from any career point. And for me, that is the exciting thing about a startup is, first of all, you can get involved in some extremely ambitious problems. We're building the biggest chip ever. I don't think a big company would do it because I don't think that they often take risks that big. So I think that for the right person that wants to solve these really unsolved, incredibly ambitious problems, it gives them this this canvas that they haven't been in before. And then the second thing is just this unbounded career opportunity where, as I say, you shift the thinking from, you know, these are your boundaries of your role, which you get in a bigger company. You know, this is the scope of role. This is the team that you're in. This is your manager. This is what you need to do in order to get promoted and things like that. For us, it's much more fluid. I think that you can make a big difference on the company, but also you could become the company's most important asset. I mean, maybe that's it. You can become the linchpin of the company, and I've seen it at Cerebras, where people have come in with 2 or 3 years experience, and they've done stuff that's made them right on the critical path, the central point of what the company's doing. And I think that's so in general, though, Anna, I think it's you need to kind of figure out what are your strengths, and go for that. And honestly, after a while, you know, stop speaking to people that, you know, if you think that they really don't want what your strengths are, you got to kind of know where to cut your losses. And that was difficult for me, is that I sort of always, I'm an optimistic recruiter. I felt like I could recruit anybody, you know, I just got to kind of win them around to my way of thinking. And you got so much stuff to do. I think that if someone wants to do something other than, you know, what you really have at a startup, then you need to know when to move on.
Cool. Yeah, amazing. I fully agree. So, and also another part of her question is like, did you generally, your general requirements to the candidates changed compared to the beginning of your hiring process? And right now, does the bar the same, higher, or maybe lower?
Two really good questions. Yeah. So the requirements haven't changed and the bar hasn't changed. And I will come back to the comment that I made about the CEO. I think the CEO sets the tone for that. I think that the CEO is the person that really drives the company to be ambitious, and either the culture moves towards growth at any cost. So let's just bring people in, doesn't, like, just do it, get them in. Or, like our CEO, every single person he speaks to, in order to just make sure that we're continuing to do the right things every single day, irrespective of how valuable we are, how many people we have. And so I think good founders do that. They're so hands-on and in the detail. And he wants us to remain like a 50-person startup, regardless how big we get. And I've met many founders, and that seems to be their characteristic, is that they don't get carried away with the growth and try and change and become a kind of grown up bigger company. They're maniacal about keeping the focus on amazing people, same as day one, as 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line.
Wow, yeah, cool. So, super insightful, and yeah, thanks for those valuable answers. And also, I have a great question from the here about what are the top three things that often executive leadership profiles look for in startups before they want to get into the recruitment process. So, especially for leadership, what they're looking for in your company before joining.
So I've got 3 things that the leadership look for.
In startups, maybe before, like, they don't know, all these great names or what to expect, what they check in with you before joining the process.
Yeah. Well, I think in general people have to be hands-on. So I'm thinking a little bit from a technical sort of engineering perspective, but they need to be able to be productive in many different environments. And I think that if somebody has become very narrow and high level, it actually, the problem with that is you're only effective in certain modes. And I think in a startup, you need someone that can be effective in many modes, because you're in a very changeable environment. And so if you have a sprint and you need to jump on something, it's very difficult if you look around the room and there are certain people that can't contribute because they don't have the sort of skill to be flexible and come in and join in. So I think we look for people that have the capability, but also want to operate in many different environments, and they're able to kind of be resilient to change. So I think that's one piece. I think the second piece is like the leader doer. You want someone that can take a lead on stuff. You want a self-starter. Even for college hiring, we like people that can operate independently. And then I think the third thing is just people that have a lot of passion, passion and ambition. And so, for us at Cerebrus, that's problem solving. That's the passion. Normally, it's people that want to work on really, really hard problems. And for my CEO, for my boss, his passion is building these really difficult products. And so I think that again, he kind of, that gets translated into the company, where it is this kind of interest in tackling really difficult problems and not looking at them and saying it's not solvable, and not looking at them and saying, I worked really hard. It's like, how do we get it done? And that gives this execution bias that makes startups be able to be really fast and achieve things that are difficult in other environments.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. It's great. Super.
I agree with Nelly
Cool.
there. Yeah, wearing several different hats. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and one final question, we will be closing this, wrapping up this session. So basically, for me, like how you engage like people, your colleagues to really participate into the process. So I know engineers and other guys are like super busy always. How you make
Yeah.
people to uh, first like participate into recruitment process, like recommend, post on different things, how you motivate them, and second, how you distribute like who will do coding challenges and so on, how to not to overlap with your usual work, full-time work. Yeah.
Well, I think that how you engage people is really difficult. It is really difficult. This is something I think it's more difficult for startups. When I worked at Facebook, it was pretty easy to get people to return your message. So I think that how we do it at Cerebrus is we try and really I think you have to be quite personal. So you have to sort of understand why you're approaching the person and be fairly sort of customized with what you're going to them for. For us, I think that you're thinking about what is unique about you, and for us, it's solving problems that you can't work on anywhere else in the industry. That's just what I've found has been the DNA of why people join us. So that's kind of what I use. And I, we have a white paper on our technology, and I normally try and get people focused on that pretty quickly. So I don't go to them with a role. I don't go to them with a particular proposition. I just go to them with, this is the company and I'd like to make an introduction, and this doesn't have to be for now, it can be for the future, but I want to build a relationship with you because everything that I can see, I think you're likely an exceptional person. One other thing, actually, just from a kind of tactical perspective, is in using this Find Them tool, this kind of automation tool, we're able to send emails from our CEO. And now we work on everything with him, so he knows what's going out, and he emails back everybody that replies and has a call with them. So there's no sort of smoke screen, but we're lucky in that he gives his time to do that. And I think in startups, if I was interviewing for a startup and the CEO was not prepared to participate in recruiting, I wouldn't take the job. I think that founders and particularly CEOs have to be so passionate about recruiting. And I think that is a way that, people don't get that exposure in bigger companies. So I think those are the two things that have been effective for us.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah, and final one for me also to follow up on that question. Like you mentioned in your workflow, everybody recruits and like enable sourcing for all. So how you do that? Because yeah, your internal colleagues have a lot of also tasks, and how you like motivate them
Mm-hmm.
to do this recruitment as well with you, not only like recruiters doing it, but also all the team members.
Yeah, because we don't pay success fees for referrals. I think this comes down to sorry, one sec. This comes down to the CEO and founder. I think they have to believe and get the organization to believe that the most important thing, or one of the most important things for our success, is bringing in amazing people, and it's everybody's responsibility to do that. And so we do it through referrals, but also, anyone can get a LinkedIn account and expense it. We coach people on how to use LinkedIn to source. This automation tool enables people to log in and build their own campaign lists of 50 to 100 people that we can then send an email on their behalf. So normally what I do is, we have a list of priorities that the recruiting team are going to work on. It's normally about 1/3 of everything, all the roles that are open for the company. The other 2/3, I'll say to anyone, let's book half an hour, and I'll give you, half an hour of my thoughts on how you can recruit for this role. You could advertise on LinkedIn. You can use this automation tool to send out a bunch of emails. We can get you access to LinkedIn so that you can go do your own sourcing. And you know, next time you get the team together, really go through and try and kind of get referrals. So that's kind of how we do it, and then we support them when people go to interview. You know, we're there and we help the team then, you know, make decisions and hire and go through the offer process.
Cool. Wow. Thank you very much, Tom. That's the last one. Very insightful. I think like training your people how to do that, it's very important. Not like, hey, help us to do recruitment and that's it. But like your trick and your mindset, how you build it up, it's super cool. I think a lot of companies should really learn from you. And thanks for your structured presentation. So if you give consent, we could share also these steps to our visitors and our webinar attendees, because you can use it as a guide for your companies to how to do recruitment in startup. So thank you very much. And yeah, of course, people will reach out to you, live attendees and other guys who will watch on YouTube, to you. And yeah, so they will be probably very curious to get to know about Cerebra's system and you. So yeah, thank you once again for participating and for sharing this very insightful info. So for all of the rest, I just want to share that next week we will have Marcus Eduardes, who is also host at podcast Recruiting Trailblazers. So we will be really happy to see it next week, and yeah, hope see you all next week, and have a nice weekend.
Thanks, Tima. Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks. Bye bye. Sure, guys. And final announcement from me, especially. If you're watching this, I just want to share after this great webinar, don't afraid to get a step in, especially in startups, to participate in different great opportunities. Right now, I'm hiring for sourcing lead for our company. So, and if you even don't know how to manage, but you are already in seniority sourcing, reach out to us, and we will be happy to guide you how you can grow with us and learn management, because I really believe in talented people. So yeah, reach us out if you're interested in sourcing or recruitment jobs, and have a nice day. Bye bye, guys.